Failure may be inevitable, but there are scientific values behind it. We've got to learn how to fail faster so we can learn smarter. Join me and let's uncover the hack behind failures. In these episodes, we'll get inside the minds of the successful, discuss the failures they've had in the past, and analyze what made them tick so we all learn from it. Welcome to Set to Fail podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Indolos. Hey everybody, this is Joseph Indolos, and today is very special because you're listening to a collaborative episode between two podcasts. One is Set to Fail podcast, and then the other one is Wolf Switch Tech News podcast. So Set to Fail podcast analyzes all sorts of failures, pain points, challenges, trying to turn adversity into potential business opportunities. And on the other hand, Wolf Switch Tech News podcast is where we hunt, discuss trending tech news, gadgets, security, cybersecurity, software, a little bit of gaming content if applicable. And we also help folks leverage technology as their first line of defense because we believe, threat prevention is better than cure. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our guest today, Jamison Rotz, who is the CEO of Nearly Human AI. Jameson, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joseph.
Awesome. And, I was really excited to bring you over the show because, as we all know, artificial intelligence is now in action. Back then, like 5 years ago, I even thought it was a fad. But, right now we see it in action. A lot of companies are using it. So, before we dive into it, maybe we can start with a quick unpacking of your business, your background, and some of the things that make you busy these days.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I've actually Nearly Human in two different variations has actually been around since 2011. We've been at this for a while. I started my career as a developer and worked my way up as a tech project manager all the way to a software portfolio manager at a government agency. And I learned a ton through that time. But I also learned that I was really interested in pursuing some of the latest technology. And I felt like that was going to be easiest to do as my own company. So I left that corporate world and started my own company. And through a course of events, I was able to land some clients and have a happy opportunity about 8 years ago. As you mentioned, just as AI was starting to really take hold in the support centers, we got a customer support client, and at the time, the capability in that space was pretty limited, and so we were able to cut our teeth in machine learning and artificial intelligence at that point in time by doing some custom algorithms to read support request emails, chat sessions, and auto create tracking tickets and route them to the appropriate support desks and skill groups, from that space. And so, we learned a lot in that area, and then we were able to land some funding, and here we are. Right now, we're currently actually fielding a platform as a service in the AI space. So it's been an exciting journey, and we're just embarking on a new phase.
Oh, awesome! And it's interesting you mentioned that you work with the government, and because I also did recruitment, trying to hire TSSCI, with clearances and all.
Oh,
So
yes.
that's awesome, and congratulations on setting up Nearly Human AI. It's a wide spectrum. It's just beginning, I think. So, but
Great.
before you even, before you even started the company, I understand there were a lot of challenges that you faced. So, what were some of, the learnings, key takeaways? How did you overcame adversity in setting up the business?
Well, I think that like I had a bit of good fortune, and I think I'm a true believer that like luck is the intersection of preparation and opportunity. So I found myself in a place where I was able to launch the company, and in terms of adversity, it's interesting. It's like um, I think for us, it was really a matter of understanding where we were at in the space and being able to shift and pivot as necessary. I think one of our biggest things as we were moving into this space was that a few years back it started to become apparent that the extremely high tech approaches that we were taking to customer support were not as applicable in a general sense as we had originally imagined. And the reason
Hmm.
was because was really an ROI thing, and that's that while our support software made sense in large, complicated, expensive environments like what the government does,
Hmm.
there was a healthy ROI. But when you look at the corporate world, where a lot of customer support is offshored at very low labor rates, there's a lot of instances where folks' automation software expense would actually outstrip what they were saving in the contact centers. And what that showed us is that we felt like the market that we expected to be there wasn't necessarily there at the price point where the industry was at. And so we pivoted a little bit, and interestingly enough, that sort of like that erosion of value in our target market that we were sort of like experiencing as it was happening led us to realize that what we needed to do was actually not just automate what's going on from a business process perspective, but automate what's happening behind the scenes with the expensive DevOps engineers and data scientists to actually bring this stuff to life. And that's why we created the platform that we did to actually automate some of those processes to drive down the cost of actually employing machine learning to automate your business processes. So that sort of like problem that we had in our client base turned into an opportunity for a sister product that could help solve some of the problems behind the scenes.
Oh, awesome. So it's really under the hood. It's not just, the surface of the business, but it's really, trying to get at the back end and then
Absolutely.
applying AI. Oh, awesome. That's very interesting. And is it safe to say that, when you started the company, AI or the trend back then, it's AI is ahead of its time back then, or is it?
Well, certainly in the natural language, I would say probably across the board, that's pretty true. But certainly in the natural language processing space that we're in, it was very much ahead of its time. That particular area has just had an explosion in the last, even in the last 2 years. It's really, really advanced. It's going to continue to advance. We still have a long ways to go with regard to certain problem sets. But it's happening very quickly right now, and that was absolutely not the case 8 years ago. It was a lot of stuff was happening in the theoretical space, and so it's been really exciting to be in the thick of it as so much technology has come online and it's started to mature to the point where we can actually employ it.
Oh my God, this conversation kind of brings back some some memories because I was back then I was selling like a data platform. It's called B2B Signals. It's somehow a competitor of Data.com, Zoom Info. And one of our pitches is like, we use AI as well as natural language processing to process the data and aggregate information.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. So yeah, you're correct. Like, back then it's like, more of a sales pitchy type of conversation, but now it's really in action. So that's awesome.
Well, I mean, I
That's
think the difference is that back then, the available algorithms you had to to create with were really bad.
yeah.
They were really bad. And so for us, we were forced to roll our own, which is really expensive. And so now you've got a lot better tech that's available as a starting point, and that's exciting.
Yeah, like sources nowadays, even video, audio, can be a source of data. So that's awesome. And since we're on the AI topic, um, like I mentioned, we now see it in action. So there are a few companies that uses the algorithm of GPT-3, the machine learning, as their back end for their product. But from your perspective, what are some of the other opportunities surrounding artificial intelligence, machine learning, as we go, 2023 and beyond? Uh, what were some of the things or the trends that you see these days?
Well, I think that you mentioned GPT-3, and I think that natural language processing is an area. I mean, obviously, I'm biased because that's the particular flavor of AI that we work most heavily in. But I'm also really excited about it because of the application that I see there. Um, when you look at it, I think that language generation, like what you see with GPT-3, has a little ways to go in terms of it's really like tactical usefulness. But the consumption of language is what's really come leaps and bounds. So I think where we're going to see in 2023, there's two areas that I think are really going to be transformative. One you sort of hinted at, and that is like in the consumption of language. There's this opportunity to bring more and more data sets, more information to life. There, a lot of people in industry have started using the buzzword of like dead data, but
Mhm.
it's essentially like unstructured language that just exists all over the place, and it's super time intensive to like munge through. But algorithms, I think, are going to really open the doors on getting that stuff out, and I think that from my perspective, what I'm really interested in seeing happen is a more malleable data landscape and getting away from highly structured data, relational databases as like our endless go-to for data storage and management, and opening that up to look at the data in ways that are more closely aligned with its native format, but using these algorithms to actually like extract the information from them and get that data moving and useful in a way that it was not before. And that's going to require both like technological changes and a bit of a change in mindset from a business perspective. But I think as we get there, that's really going to unlock a lot of value. The other part that's really exciting to me from a natural language process is the ability to more seamlessly interact with our devices. One of the things that motivates me long term from with nearly human is the idea of managing our tasks based on what we're good at, and I see like machine learning and systems being very good at repetitive tasks that we get bored and sloppy with quickly, and also data intensive tasks that tend to like overwhelm us because we're trying to consume too many variables at once and it's confusing. So the thing about natural language is as we get better at understanding the our language as it's especially as it's spoken, it gives us another avenue to interact faster, essentially more bandwidth between us and our devices, um, and and gives us the ability to offload more tasks throughout the course of our day that are either repetitive or data intensive, and give those to our systems while we focus on the things, the creative, the interactive, the social tasks of our day that we're sort of like innately good at as humans. And I think that is a trend that will continue to like not only accelerate tech and productivity, but make our lives better in the process. And that's exciting to me.
Yeah, like focusing on the important tasks, most likely even the revenue generating tasks, would help expedite a lot of these processes. So it's awesome. And alongside uh, AI, being prevalent, there are pros and cons. So for sure. And I like and I love what you mentioned about responsible AI, based on my research. So I feel this is very important these days. So what's your take on this? And is it something to be worried about? Are there any, let's say, compliances that can somehow control the extent of these algorithms? It's funny because I was playing with AI Dungeon. I think that was the one that I use, and it some cases it actually actually provides inappropriate responses. So some of the things like that. I even read a quote that said, "I'm not scared of AI, but I'm scared of the mindset of the developers that are using and building it." so what's your take on that?
Well, I think there are lots of reasons to be concerned, and I think concern is healthy whenever you're bringing new technology to market to actually go do things. I think that people are really talking about it a lot. I if I think about if I think about where I worry, in terms of your quote there, I think that there is some concern. Not necessarily. I don't think. I think the issues with AI are all unintended.
Mhm.
I don't think that any of the problems that we've experienced with AI were initially malicious, but I think our willingness and diligence to react when we see problems starting to happen is super important. And I think there needs to be better accountability around that.
Mhm.
I think that is certainly the case with what we saw going on at Meta, where the company itself was like highly aware of the problems that were happening, but willfully ignored
Right.
what was going on to try to benefit their company. And I think that's wrong. And I think that's where regulation needs to step in. Um, the other side of things, where I really do worry in the next 5 to 7 years, is we're bringing more and more algorithms online, and this is going to accelerate exponentially, I think, over the next decade.
Mhm.
And what happens there is that you have more and more algorithms finding their way into these processes. So right now, the algorithms are usually like bookended with human interaction. So it's like humans do something, there's an algorithm that handles a part of the process, and then humans are back into the loop. But as we continue to automate, the human tasks are going to become fewer and the automated tasks are going to become greater. And there's where, this quote kind of like rings a bell, because it's not necessarily that the developers are being a problem,
Mhm.
but they are probably being short-sighted, and they're probably making assumptions about what's happening before upstream and downstream from where their algorithms are. And the thing about algorithms is they will always give you an answer. It's not like a fail state like rules based systems would typically have, unless you've developed for it, right? So
Mhm.
I think these are some of the areas that we really have to think about, because as things become more and more complex and algorithms are bigger players within a complex interconnection of businesses and systems and things, that's where like the risk of these sort of like black swan events crop up, where bad data enters the system and everything goes haywire. And so I think that we have to pay attention to that going forward. And the White House put out like a blueprint for um, a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, which
Oh,
is
okay.
really interesting to me. And I think that they've hit 5 areas that I think if we start paying attention to and being diligent about, as both like tech users and tech providers, it gives us a decent framework to move forward with.
That's I think accountability is really very important on this, right? So that's awesome, and thanks for bringing that up. And this is just a. Can I ask a random question, like a
Yeah.
crazy random question? So can we use AI to make flying cars a reality
Yeah, I
in the
mean,
future?
absolutely. In fact, like that's happening. So companies like Joby and Archer are literally
Oh,
already getting after that. And it's really interesting. In some ways, honestly, in some ways, the flying cars are a less complicated problem from the AI perspective than than the cars that travel the roads.
right.
It's a more difficult problem from a physics perspective, but yeah, that's these things are all going to be realities within our lifetime, which is really exciting.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I'd love to experience that. Yeah,
Me
sometime in my
too.
lifetime.
Me too.
Right. So, in terms of, I think you mentioned in the company DevSecOps. So maybe there's a component about security, cybersecurity there. Um, what are some of like the example applications of what you guys are doing, like DevSecOps? How do you implement that? How do you implement AI to that, if that makes sense?
Well, I think there's two sides to it in what we do. So the DevSecOps that we focus on right now is essentially like implementing industry best standards in cloud security for the platform as a service that we offer. And so the idea there is that by using our cloud-based service, you get the DevSecOps as part of the service, meaning that the data is protected, the network boundaries are protected, the ability to detect a breach and repave over it is there. And these are things that are like they're pretty sophisticated things that individual organizations trying to implement on their own, if they're not specifically like a cloud-based tech company,
Mhm.
are pretty difficult. But it's something that's important in terms of like security posture. From an AI perspective, this is a really interesting one, right? Because there's a lot of opportunity going forward to utilize AI for cybersecurity, and it's already happening right now.
Mhm.
The when there are like security breaches and bad actors, follow recognizable patterns, right?
Mhm.
And you know, machine learning is really good at spotting that stuff. And so there is absolutely like algorithmic warfare going on behind the scenes right now in terms of cybersecurity. There's a lot of malicious bots that are out there, and if you take AWS for example, I mean, if you can do this as an experiment. If you
Mhm.
go and create an AWS account and like don't secure it, leave it open, you will probably have some sort of Bitcoin or digital currency being mined on your platform
Oh,
within
wow.
hours. There are bots just scouring AWS looking for poorly configured accounts to just log in, spin up resources, and spend your money mining their coin. And meanwhile, AWS has algorithms in place to detect when this happens and shut it down. I think you're going to see more and more of this, and I think that what governments need to do is to regulate how this information gets used, because obviously
Mhm.
the concern there is a minority report type situation, right, where algorithms are detecting a bad behavior, and then but the action I think that that gets taken with that information is what really matters. And it's probably the country that you choose to live in and the laws that country passes is probably going to become more and more important in terms of your quality of life, and your digital life going forward because of these types of advancements.
Yeah, and going back to what you mentioned earlier about the blueprint, I think that's very important, because from my perspective, I'm from Philippines, so usually a lot of our legislations and some of the things uh, in the government sector, we try to pattern it in the U.S. So hopefully a lot of our listeners, both in the U.S. and Philippines, can hear this conversation where there are some areas that we can put into place in order to make this stay compliant, and like your company, Nearly Human, and then, there's a responsible AI component to it, which is, I think, super critical these days, because we don't want it to be like the the next Skynet Terminator type of.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, there's robotic criminals out there essentially, right? And so
yeah,
to meet that at scale, it's going to require responsible algorithms out there working against them. So it's just the brave new world that we're in, and we have to be careful about how we navigate it.
yeah. Sometimes I wanted to go back and just listen to my music inside a CD or something. That exposes my age.
Right?
But
Oh,
yeah, but
absolutely.
yeah. So from your perspective, you've shared a lot about the company, but apart from what you mentioned earlier, you have a very interesting take on how you structured your value proposition. So, what are the things that you're trying to solve in today's world using your solutions, and from the benefit of for the benefit of our listeners, how they can take advantage of Nearly Human AI.
Sure. So the product that we're fielding right now is we call it our Nearly Human Cortex. And what this is, obviously the pun there is that it's the brains behind the operation. But what this platform allows you to do is drive down the cost of implementing machine learning. Because what we saw was there's a lot of organizations that have really sophisticated institutional knowledge. They've got data scientists that are creating machine learning algorithms that have proven that they're capable of improving business processes. But getting those things deployed and interconnected with existing business systems so that they can automate or provide decisional information in real time is really troubling. And it's because it's so difficult to get a secure deployment environment out there. So what happened with us is that we were in the background as we're implementing, customer support bots and things of that nature. That was even for us who we're well versed in the cloud tech that's used to make this happen. It still became really time consuming. And so we started automating that for ourselves, and then realizing as we were going that this is something that a lot of people needed. So we decided to turn it into a product. So what it does is it allows you to, if you have a GitHub repository that has Python machine learning models in there, you can take our platform, connect directly to your GitHub, and then drag and drop data onto the Cortex platform, or connect Cortex through APIs or database connections to get after the data that your models need to train. You can train in the cloud, or you can use a command line interface that's delivered with the system to train locally and upload to the cloud. Once your model's trained, then our platform goes through an automated series of tests, a combination of baseline responsible AI tests, as well as specific tests that that you define as the end user to cross-validate your model. And once those tests are passed, they'll either halt if it's a critical test, or provide warnings if it's a test that is simply analyzing results, but is not necessarily indicating an existential problem. And then it will automate once you've tested it and it passes. Then we have one-click deploy out to Kubernetes, which automatically exposes it on a secure RESTful API endpoint. And then you can just hit that with Postman or interconnect it with with the APIs that your business systems currently support, and you can create these individual automated endpoints to automate away various different pieces of your business process in any capacity that you like. And then you have the added benefit of once you've done that, everything that you do is audited within our system, which gives you compliance. You can go back and look at all of the models that you have deployed. You can see their testing status from both an operational and a responsible AI perspective, and you can see every inference that's being called on the API endpoints as it's happening. And then if there's a problem somewhere or somebody raises a concern with something that your model's doing, you can just pull the inference ID, go back, do a full trace on it, understand what's going on, and then retrain your model to address it.
Oh, awesome. That's great. And I'm assuming it's native to any technology stack that companies are currently using.
Yeah. And so the RESTful APIs with JSON payloads are something that is like widely adopted at this point, and it makes integration really easy, which is the biggest problem, right? These machine learning models were basically like languishing on data scientists' desktops and needed a way to be integrated, and so this brings that to light. And the hope is two things. One, that this drives down the cost of implementation. So there's a positive ROI on more and more types of automation, which is going to drive things forward. And then also that this actually opens the door to a lot of those interesting models that just have never seen the light of day to be taken advantage of, because the cost of getting them deployed out to production was just too high.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. Yes, and for, let's say, curious folks that would like to connect with you and maybe try out your solution, where can they find you? And where they can connect you easily? Is it website, socials?
Yeah, you can find us at www.nearlyhuman.ai. You can email me at jamison.rotz@nearlyhuman.ai. My LinkedIn is a great place to get in touch with me. That's linkedin.com/in/Jamison Rotz, JAMISONROTZ. And then our company page on LinkedIn is simply LinkedIn company/nearlyhuman.
Awesome, and I'll get those links from you. I'll put that to the description on the podcast as well as on YouTube. So before I let you go, Jameson, what advice can you give to someone that's, let's say, starting a business or even trying to conceptualize an AI product, a startup? What would you recommend to kind of future-proof their business, their concept, their idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like future-proof, I think is something that has really changed over the last decade. And I think it's proven that the only way that you future-proof a company is to just keep innovating. I think you have to be grounded. You need to take that idea and get a minimum viable product around it in the hands of people that can use it as quickly as possible. And then be very curious, like watch how they're using it, how it does or doesn't work, what the value proposition is around it. And then just keep learning about everything around the space of your idea. Because I mean, my experience has been that what you go out the gate with looks like something very different from what you're going to end up ultimately fielding as the product that will take your business and allow you to scale it. And so I think, getting those things to market and then continuing to pay attention to your stakeholders and your customers about their needs and their struggles and innovate around it is really, that's the ticket when it comes to staying relevant. And I think that, you look at companies, once you've found, your hit
Mm-hmm.
product, right? You can't stop. Because the viability of these products in terms of lifespan is just like shrinking. From old school stuff that used to be like 50 years to 15 years or 10 years or 7 years or 3 years, right? Because everything is changing. You just have to like stay ahead of it and continue to offer new product and innovate.
Yeah. Before it's just simply, going to the cloud and, you can future proof. But nowadays, you need to even explore AI in order to embed that to your process, if you will. So yeah, that's gold. Thank you for sharing those thoughts, and I think this will help not just the aspiring entrepreneurs, but also the tech organizations, the IT heads, to open up their minds with regard to artificial intelligence, machine learning. So thank you so much for your time, Jameson. It's a great pleasure. I appreciate your time today. And that's it for now, everyone. If you like this content, feel free to drop a comment on YouTube if you have any suggestions. Also, drop a review on Spotify and Apple Podcast. So this is Joseph Indolos. You're listening to Set to Fail podcast, as well as Wolf Switch Tech News podcast. Again, thanks so much, Jameson. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Joseph.
And there you have it. We hope you enjoyed and learned a lot in this episode. And if you did, please subscribe to YouTube, hit the notification bell, leave us a comment, also reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcast. This would really help the show to continue creating more and more insightful content for us to learn together. Thank you very much. Have a great day.